So make sure you pull it up there on Shobi. And your Bibles are turned to 2 Samuel chapter 1. All right, so lesson 11 here. This is titled David's Grief. So he's going to find out some things here because we had two simultaneous stories happening at the same time. At the same time that David was fighting the men who had attacked Ziklag, the Amalekites, and had stolen those people. And now he was returning back to Ziklag. At that same time, Saul was out on the battlefield fighting the Philistines and dying. So how is there yet grief for David? Well, we'll see here in today's lesson. So 2 Samuel chapter 1. Okay? It says, Now it came to pass after the death of Saul, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites, and David had abode 2 days in Ziklag, it came even to pass on the third day that, behold, a man came out of the camp from Saul with his clothes rent and earth upon his head. And so it was when he came to David that he fell to the earth and did obeisance. And David said unto him, From whence comest thou? And he said unto him, Out of the camp of Israel am I escaped. And David said unto him, How went the matter? I pray thee, tell me. And he answered, That the people are fled from the battle, and many of the people are also fallen and dead. And Saul and Jonathan his son are dead also. And David said unto the young man that told him, How knowest thou that Saul and Jonathan his son be dead? The young man that told him said, As I happened by chance upon Mount Gilboa, behold, Saul leaned upon his spear, and lo, the chariots and horsemen followed hard after him. And when he looked behind him, he saw me, and called unto me, and I answered, Here am I. And I said unto him, Who art thou? And I answered him, I am an Amalekite. And he said unto me, Again, stand, I pray thee, upon me, and slay me. For anguish is come upon me, because my life is yet whole in me. So I stood upon him, and slew him, because I was sure that he could not live after that he was fallen. And I took the crown that was upon his head, and the bracelet that was on his arm, and have brought them hither unto my Lord. So, at approximately probably the same time David is back at Ziklag here, Saul is out there fighting, and he dies out on the battlefield. And here this man, this young man who was out there was a bit of, we might say, a scavenger, a thief. You see, he probably snuck out to the battlefields as many other people did after the battle was done. He ran out there. And what was he looking for? Riches, gold, silver, any belongings. Before the Philistines would come back the next day to check the battlefield, he went out there, and there he came upon King Saul. And he probably took whatever treasures he could find, the crown, and he took the bracelets. Because we know the next day the Philistines came and took Saul and his sons and brought them over to the land of the Philistines. So this man is probably out there in the field, maybe in the dark of night or in the early of the morning or sometime, and he's out there running around looking what treasures he can find. Well, he finds those treasures and he takes them for himself. But then he thinks, because he's a conniving man, this gold, if I have it, this treasures, first of all, if I get caught with it, I might be in trouble, because somebody might accuse me of having killed the king. Second of all, I shouldn't have it in my possession. And third of all, it's only got a short amount of use. If I would sell it or pawn it, I would get some money, and that money would soon run out. This man, no, he has a better idea. He thinks, how can I get myself set for life? How can I make myself the hero? And then I'll be set for life. I'll have riches and glory and honor. That's what this man is thinking. Well, he thinks probably the same way that you and I do. We all like to be the first to tell the news. Hey, did you hear this? Did you hear this? Maybe something happens at school, and so you want to get off the bus or get out of the car or be the first one out to the car and tell mom or dad what's going on or what's happening. You got to beat your brother or sister. That's always kind of our sinful wicked attitude. We got to be the first to tell them. Well, that's what this young man here is thinking. So he takes that gold crown and he takes the bracelet and he thinks to himself, now I'll go tell David. And I'll be the first to tell him. And David will be happy. Hooray! The man who's been chasing me for years now is dead. I can finally be king and be free of him. David will be so happy when I get there. And when I tell him the great news that Saul is dead, I know. I'll embellish the story a little bit. I won't just tell him Saul's dead. I'll tell him I did it. Because then David will be indebted to me. David will think, wow, thank you so much, my servant. Why, if you hadn't done that, I wouldn't have been able to be king today. Why, I owe my life to you. I'll make you an important ruler or prince in my kingdom. You'll have food to eat and riches and whatever you want. That's what this young man here is hoping. Okay? And so what does he do? He runs off and he tells David, the rest of the Israelites have fled. They had to run out of the battlefield because we've lost. The Philistines have the victory. By the way, Jonathan and Saul, they are both dead. And so are many of the Israelites. That's the first bit of news. And David wants to know, well, how do you know? How is it that you know this? And the young man then begins to tell a lie. Well, I was on Mount Gilboa there, and I saw Saul, and he was leaning on his sword as though he was injured. He was hurt, and he was leaning on his sword. Now, not leaning on his sword like we think on, like stabbing himself through, but leaning on his sword, it was the pointed part in the ground. He might be leaning on himself like a crutch. And I saw that he was injured, and I went running up to him to maybe see if I could do anything. And I noticed in the far-off distance, the Philistines were coming here towards Saul. And soon he couldn't escape. He was going to die. And so I went up to him, and Saul spoke to me that he was in such great anguish, and he asked me who I was, and I said, well, I'm an Amalekite. Oh, well, good, you're not one of those Philistines. Saul said, so I'm in anguish. I'm going to die here, but I don't want to die by the hands of those Philistines. Please, okay? Kill me, for I'm in anguish. And I didn't want to do it, David. I didn't want to kill Saul initially, because he is the king, but then I saw he wasn't going to live anyways. And so I thought to myself, well, this is the king's request, and I'll make sure I'll do it. And I know that David will be happy. So I took his sword, Saul, and I killed him. And he's dead. And here's the crown and the bracelets to prove it. I took them from him, and I bring them to you, David, because you're the king. And that's, well, when this young man had come up to David, he looked tattered and torn, because he had been out there, and he wasn't a real wealthy man. But also, he bowed down himself before David because he knew he was approaching the king. So he calls him here his king and his master. Was this man's story true? Absolutely not. There were quite a few elements that were wrong that this man spoke of. First of all, Saul wasn't leaning on his sword. No, Saul had been struck by an arrow. Okay. Saul didn't ask him to kill him. Saul asked his bodyguard to kill him. And this man did not kill Saul. Saul killed himself. He fell on his own sword. Was Saul in pain and anguish and couldn't escape? We don't know. But a lot of this man's story is pretty false. He doesn't seem very bothered by the fact that he has just killed a man, especially the king. No, seems like he's rather giddy about it. Well, what is David's reaction? Well, that comes to us in verse 11 here. He says, Then David took hold on his clothes and rent them, and likewise all the men that were with him. And they mourned and wept and fasted until even for Saul and for Jonathan his son and for the people of the Lord and for the house of Israel, because they were fallen by the sword. And David said unto the young man that told him, Whence art thou? And he answered, I am the son of a stranger, an Amalekite. And David said unto him, How wast thou not afraid to stretch forth thine hand to destroy the Lord's anointed? And David called one of the young men and said, Go near and fall upon him. And he smote him, and he died. And David said unto him, Thy blood be upon thy head, for thy mouth hath testified against thee, saying, I have slain the Lord's anointed. Whether David believed this man's story, or whether David didn't believe this man's story, this man was worthy of death. For this type of lie, kill him. He deserves death. Or, if he had killed the king and the story was true in David's mind, well, then he deserves death too. Either way, David is correct here in putting this man to death and punishing him. David showed grief We see they ripped their clothes off, and it says they mourned, and then they even fasted. Now, we might say, why would David be sad here? His enemy is dead. Well, Saul is dead, but he is probably also very lamentably sad because of Jonathan, his friend, his best friend, who his soul was knit together, is now dead. He'll never see him again on this earth. But also, it is the king's anointed. The Lord did choose Saul to lead the people of Israel. God had anointed him. He was the king. So whether their ideas were the same or not, there is a level of respect that David has for Saul because Saul was his king. And so he mourns that way too. Just like we may not agree with all the principles in your lifetime with every single president that comes along. You may not agree with everything. But it is lamentable if someone would kill the king, or the president of the United States. We would be sad. That would be a sad thing. Okay? So we see the same thing here. Now, if you skip up, we're going to jump up because David commands. He has the song of the bow. That's something you'll go over more on your worksheet there for lessons 10, 11, and 12, and ask some questions about those. But go to chapter 2. I want to read here about David being made king, but not completely being made king, because that's going to lead to some troubles. We see that our title here is about David's sadness, and that's exactly what's going on here. How long is it? All right, so let's pick it up here at chapter 2. Okay, starting at verse 1. And it came to pass after this that David inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I go up into any of the cities of Judah? And the Lord said unto him, Go up. And David said, Whither shall I go? And he said, Unto Hebron. So David went up thither, and his 2 wives also, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail, Nabal's wife, Carmelite. And his men that were with him did David bring up, every man with his household, and they dwelt in the cities of Hebron. And the men of Judah came, and there they anointed David king over the house of Judah. And they told David, saying, The men of Jabesh Gilead were they that buried Saul. And David sent messengers unto the men of Jabesh Gilead, and said unto them, Blessed be ye of the Lord, that ye have showed this kindness unto your Lord, even unto Saul, and have buried him. And now the Lord show you kindness and truth unto you, and I also will requite you this kindness, because ye have done this thing. Therefore now let your hands be strengthened, and be ye valiant, for your master Saul is dead, and also the house of Judah have anointed me king over them. So we see a few things here. David is now anointed king. He becomes of Judah, though. That's just one tribe. Okay? So David wants to know, shall I go back into my land? Here he is living in the land of Philistia. Shall I go back? And the Lord says, yes, ye shall go back. Where shall I go? Go to Hebron. That's the place of the king. Go there. And there David is made the king. But he's only made king over Judah. Okay? And also, we see there, at the same time, David sends a message of thanks to the men and women of Jabesh Gilead. Because if you remember in the last lesson, the Philistines came out to the battlefield, took the bodies of Saul and his sons, brought them over to the land of the Philistines, chopped off their heads, put their heads in the temple of Dagon, put the bodies in another temple, and the men of Jabesh Gilead knew that was wrong and improper, and they gathered together a band of wise, wily, cunning, soldierish men, and they went marching sneakily into the land of the Philistines, and they took the bodies and the heads down. They brought them back into the land. They burned them so that the Philistines could never take those bodies again, and they buried those bones under a tree. And like we said, eventually David will move those bones to the actual burial plot of Saul and his family. So David has great respect here for the men of Jabesh Gilead and praises them because of the kind things that they had done. That was the proper and right thing to do. Okay? And then he asks them at the end, be strong, I am the new king. I pray that you respect me as the new king. Okay? Verse 8 here, but then we get into some trouble. That seems like a pretty nice thing, but it's not all sugar and roses and peaches quite yet for David, but it's rather troublesome. Verse 8, but Abner, the son of Ner, captain of Saul's host, took Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahanaim, and made him king over Gilead, and over the Asherites, and over Jezreel, and over Ephraim, and over Benjamin, and over all Israel. So, Abner, meanwhile, he's probably out there in the battlefield, finishes up some of the fighting with the Philistines. The men there look to him as ruler, but he knows he shouldn't be king. So he takes Ishbosheth, Saul's son that's still living, and makes him the new king, anoints him the new king over the other tribes. Okay? And the next verses we're going to skip because it kind of goes back. It kind of tells a timeline. And it seems like, well, Ishbosheth was king after David. No, that's not true. Ishbosheth is king here of the other tribes, but only for a short time, for 2 years. Okay? And so, skip to verse 13. We're going to see Abner was the right-hand man of Saul, right? He was the guy that got in trouble that one time when David snuck up and stole the pitcher and the spear. So Abner was the right-hand man of Saul. David, now being king, he needs a right-hand man. He's no longer the leader into battle. Somebody else needs that position. Now David goes into battle, but he's not the tactician and the one that's out there in the battlefield. Because you usually want to keep the king somewhere safe. Okay? So he needs a right-hand man. And here we get introduced to him. His name is Joab. Verse 13. And Joab, the son of Zeruiah, the servants of David went out and met together by the pool of Gibeon. And they sat down, the one on the one side of the pool and the other on the other side of the pool. And Abner said to Joab, let the young men now arise and play before us. And Joab said, let them arise. Then there arose and went over by number 12 of Benjamin, which pertained to Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and 12 of the servants of David. We've got to pause there a second to understand what's going on. So Joab, he's actually a relative of David, okay? And he's made the right-hand man. So he's going to command the army of David. Abner is now commanding the army of Ishbosheth. And they meet together in a place, and they decide, rather than having us this large battle, why don't you choose out 12 of your best soldiers, put them over there. I'll choose out 12 of my best soldiers, put them over here. We will have them fight against each other, and whoever wins is the winner of the battle. That way we don't wipe out and decimate our whole armies. And Joab is agreeable to this. But then something sneaky happens. Okay? So there arose the 12 of Benjamin, which pertained to Ishbosheth, and the 12 servants of David. Verse 16. And they caught every one of his fellow by the head, and thrust his sword in his fellow's side. So they fell down together, wherefore that place was called Helkath Harazim, which is in Gibeon. And there was a very sore battle that day, and Abner was beaten, and the men of Israel before the servants of David. And there were 3 sons of Zeruiah there, Joab, Abishai, and Asahel. And Asahel was light of foot as a wild roe. So we're just doing a quick pause there. So what happens? These guys, the 12 men, they stand up to fight the other 12 men. Okay? And let's see what we want to do here, who's going to win. But here's what happened. Joab's 12 men caught the other one by kind of their, remember they had beards, just grabbed their beard, hold on to him, and thrust a spear or knife or sword into the insides or the guts of the other one, and they killed them. All the men fell down, and, well, since now nothing is decided, it seemed like trickery. Both sides begin to battle. They begin to go after each other. They begin to fight. And then we learn about this other person. We learn about a man named Asahel. So he is a brother of Joab. Okay, so Joab is the right-hand man of David, and he has probably a younger brother, Asahel. And Asahel, we see, is he's light of foot, which means he's a very fast runner. If you needed to send a message, Asahel was your man. He'll get it there fastest back in those days. Okay? Verse 19, and Asahel pursued after Abner. So he's chasing after Abner, Ishbosheth's leader. So he's like, haha, I'll be the one that gets the fame and victory in this battle. I'll kill Abner. And then all of our troubles will go away. Kind of a bad move, right? It's kind of taking a wily, I don't know, Logan. How's Caleb? Caleb likes to brag a lot, right? Yeah, he likes to brag about how good he is, right? So if he decided to take on a wily and cunning and smarter person than him, let's say he wanted to try to arm wrestle Dad, who's going to win every time? Yeah, Caleb ain't got a chance, right? That's kind of the situation here. Asahel, he's kind of there. He's kind of filled with pride, and I know I can take on this guy. And no, you can't, Asahel. Abner's a wise, cunning, old man. Maybe you're a little faster than him, but for strength and for brains, you're messing with the wrong guy. Okay? And Abner even warns him of that as we read here. Okay? Then Abner looked behind him and said, Art thou Asahel? And he said, I am. And Abner said to him, Turn thee aside to the right hand or to the left, and lay hold on one of the young men, and take thee his armor. But Asahel would not turn from following him. And Abner again said again to Asahel, Turn thee aside from following thee. Wherefore should I smite thee to the ground? How then should I hold up my face to Joab thy brother? So here's Asahel. He's running. They're in a foot race. You can see Abner yelling behind, Hey! Stop it! If you need to get the armor and you're looking for all the spoils of victory, go kill someone else. You mess with me, you're messing with the wrong man. I'm not going to kill you here because if I kill you right now, I know your brother's not going to be angry or happy with me. And Abner is smart. He doesn't want to get in a battle with Joab. Joab's another wise, cunning old man. Okay, it's like two animals in the animal kingdom, two wily old lions that have been fighting against one another, or two male monkeys that are the oldest in the group, and they've been ruling over their broods, and now you're going to have them fight? It's not going to be a good ending. It's going to be a long, bloody battle. They're both wily and cunning. Asahel, stop it. Go bug someone else. But Asahel's stubborn. He doesn't care. He keeps chasing after him. Abner again warns him, turn to the left or turn to the right. This ain't going to end good, Asahel. Asahel doesn't care. He keeps getting closer and closer and closer. And what does Abner finally have to do? Verse 23, Howbeit he refused to turn aside. Wherefore Abner with the hinder end of his spear smote him under the fifth rib. And the spear came out behind him, and he fell down there and died in the same place. And it came to pass that as many came to the place where Asahel fell down and stood there. Joab also and Abishai pursued after Abner, and the sun went down when they were come to the hill of Ammah, that lieth before Gilead by the way of the wilderness of Gibeon. So what's the result? The wily old Abner, what does he do? He takes his spear while he's running, and when Asahel gets close that Asahel thinks, well, maybe I'll be able to stab him or thrust it through, he takes his spear and jams it backwards. Takes that long stick and it catches boom, right below the fifth, right around the heart or lungs of Asahel, and he dies there. He's dead. He was foolish. He should have listened, but he didn't. Okay? He wanted to continue after him. So now obviously Abner knows he needs to keep running because now he's not going to just have a few men after him. Now he's going to have Joab and he's going to have Abishai. They are both now going to be chasing after Abner because they want revenge for their brother's death. So we can see this was a pretty vicious, bloody battle. But unfortunately, it's a bloody battle that's what we call a civil war. This is God's people fighting against God's people. This is Israel and Judah. This is Benjamin and Judah fighting against each other. These two tribes should be getting along, helping each other out. The Philistines are up in the northern part of the land taking whatever they want at this time because there's no soldiers left up there to fight them. They're fighting against each other. What foolishness. And they put themselves at risk and they're murdering one another, their own people. Within the church, they're fighting one another. And that's not a good thing. And we'll see what the result of that is. Okay? David is made king over Judah. Will he eventually be made king over Israel? I don't know the answer to that, but we'll see how those things kind of happen in the next lesson here.